All right. Well, with me today on the Rest from Recovery podcast is Brandon Mancine, fitness professional and co member of a men's mastermind called the Iron Council. So, Brandon, welcome to the Rest from Recovery podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. I know we chatted briefly in the past and align in a few ways, not just on the title of this, but how to leverage rest and recovery really to get fulfillment for us, especially, it's relevant to anybody, but for men, we're good at pushing the lever and finding, that fifth gear probably too often, too much.
Yeah.
Um, but and it's not, an inappropriate thing. It's just we have to account for that rest and recovery piece to help us do that thing over again. Before we jump into kind of that concept and conversation, give a little background on yourself. You're a fitness professional. How long you been in there? What got you there? Um,
Sure. So been doing it full time for over 2 decades now. I went in the Marine Corps straight out of high school.
okay.
Went to boot camp in '96, 4 days after graduating high school.
Well, thank you for
Worked. Thank you. Thank you. Uh, Machine gunner, 0 through 31 was my primary MOS. Worked in fast company anti-terrorism for a bit, some special operations there. And then Kilo 3-2. So got to go to the Middle East for a bit, got to go to Japan for a bit. Japan was a lot more fun. Got
sure.
out. Yeah. So got out and typical thing, like didn't have anybody pushing me for exercise. So after 6 months, I found myself probably in the worst shape of my life. Couldn't run more than 50 yards without just my knees killing me. And I was 24 years old at the time. So my joined the YMCA to, get back into shape, and was resigning myself to, the typical thing of just working upper body. And there was a trainer there who came from a Marine Corps family, and started talking to him. He helped me out a bit and helped me realize that, exercise is not what most 20-year-old men think about it, just beating the hell out of yourself in the hour, right? But it is the SAID principle: specific adaptation to impose demand, putting demand on your body so that it will adapt and become able to do whatever it is you're training for. So the concept of reconditioning. So after, 3 months of his guidance, I was like, I can run again. It was amazing. I could now run 3 miles again or more if I wanted to, but I don't ever really want to. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of in part what spurred me into becoming a personal trainer. And then I was living in Norfolk at that time. Ended up finding my way to Northern Virginia, just outside of DC. Met really early in my fitness career some just rock star coaches that kind of, this is when like functional fitness was kind of becoming a thing. Everybody was standing on top of Bosu balls, right? The 2001, early 2000s. And they were like, cool, if people want to do that, you can help them do that. And that can be fun and interesting. And that can keep them, engaged in exercise. But the tried and true stuff that works because it works, right? So get strong and do stuff is my hashtag. It's like the weekend warriors version of strength and conditioning, right? And then of course the other side of that is you're not stronger at the end of your workout, right? You're broken down a little bit, you're weaker, and you get stronger as you rest and recover, if you rest and recover properly and enough, right? So it's yeah, that kind of catches us up for the most part to now. But
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, it's interesting that your background, because, I would say, and maybe it's just my own mindset, the larger macro community is that what you said of like, you go in the gym and it's an hour to beat the hell out of yourself. And it feels good, right? But we can get kind of addicted or used to that perspective and thinking that's what working out equals. is being exhausted at the end of it. And no matter what you are, like I'm coming from, you said you don't want to do more than 3. I'm coming from the other end of the spectrum of it as a runner. But you can have that same approach and mentality of just beating the hell out of yourself, of like going too far, too fast for too long, and just pounding yourself to death, and then not accounting for the other things, because we're not pro athletes, right? And even then, if you think about what they do, many of them sleep 9 to 12 hours, right?
Yeah.
Because pounding their body. Now, as the everyday athletes like you and I, and most of your clients and mine, we're not, but we have a similar total life load, as I call it, is that we have to account for. It's just not the fitness
Yep.
element. It's other components as a dad or a mom, right? As a coworker, business leader, business owner, really accounting for that total life load that, my story is not accounting for that, right? And I was pushing
Yeah.
the envelope on each of those domains of my life, quote unquote, 100%.
Yeah. I 100% agree with everything you said there. A couple of things when you talked about pro athletes and their rest and recovery. I remember a few years ago, it might even be a decade ago now, when James Harrison, when he was with the Steelers, it was coming out that he spent something like $225,000 a year in his recovery side of his exercise program, right? So we weren't even getting into the strength and conditioning side, the workout side, just his recovery side, $225,000 a year.
Wow.
And and people were talking about, I think he was close to 40 at that time, and playing the way he played, which was all out, right? And that's something to be said for that. So when you talk about, how did you put it, total life load?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I sit down with somebody in a consultation, there's a part in the consultation where I'll ask them, after we've talked about goals, after we've talked about support system, exercise history, toward the end, I'll say, okay, once we got a clear picture there, not just what their goals are, but why they're important to them, what is your commitment level to these goals on a scale of 1 to 10, right? 1 being not committed at all, 10 being completely committed. And, I want to hear an 8 or a 9.
Right.
Right. So if somebody says, I think I'm a 6, I'm going to come back to, okay, you talked about this. Is that really important to you then? Like, a 6 seems kind of far down. But if somebody says they're a 10, then I'm going to say, okay, great. Love to hear it. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to quit your job. You're not going to talk to family or friends for a couple of months. I'm going to set up a tent in my backyard, and I'm going to carve out this little section of my yard where you're going to grow your food. And there they start laughing and say, okay, cool. Let's be clear about something. Even most professional athletes aren't a 10, right? They can be, because it's their livelihood. But I always come back to, when my daughter was 3 months old, she had RSV, a pretty bad case of it. And so she went into the hospital. We had to take her in there for 48 hours. She was doing these breathing treatments every half an hour, and it was miserable. She had no concept of what was going on. She would just scream during the treatments. And my wife stayed there with her the whole time. And then my in-laws were watching my son. So for all that time, I was going back and forth between the hospital and the house, making sure everybody had what they need, right? Imagine if in the middle of that, I would have said, hey, babe, you're good. I got to go get my workout because that's my top priority. Fuck no, right? So the workout is an 8 or 9, because keeping it consistently in there empowers me to play the roles I need to play in that top priority role of man, husband, father, provider. So I think it's important to know, to clearly define where that sits, because I think far too often people say, yeah, I'm a 10, and they go after it like they're a 10, and then relationships suffer and job suffers and everything that is truly important suffers. And then they say, oh, this is impossible. This is not maintainable.
Yeah.
Well, not if you do it that way.
100%. And it really echoes the whole, I call it the New Year's resolution syndrome. You know what I mean? Is you go in so
Bingo.
hard and fast, and you go from like couch the 5K kind of mentality of, or really couch the marathon in within a short period, and you don't, you know, account for all those different things, and you burn out. Um,
Yep.
and then you get frustrated, and then you just don't go back. Or, and we've all done it. I've been there, that yo-yoing element. um, so yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the pace of play is really important to understand contextually as to where you are in the present state. And I really like your method, you know, and it's a similar one from my functional practice of, you know, asking that question of that one, that, you know, 1 to 10, where are you? And really understanding what that number means and putting some context to it, right? Because we all are knee jerk is we want to say that 9, 10, right? Of course, I'm not a 6, or 5 or whatever. I'm committed. But then you have to really review commitment, and then I guess level of effort
Yeah.
are not the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Very well said. Commitment and level of effort are very far from the same thing. Yes, sir.
So, when you're dealing with this, what are some of the impediments that you see with men when it comes to that, right? Whether it's mindset or like lack of support, or, you know, the the lone wolf that's not so wise, you know, methodology. But, you know, maybe touch on that a little.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the, not one of the first thing that I talk about when I sit down with someone is support system, right? So if you make this declaration of, I'm going to change my life, I'm going to get healthy, I'm going to become the best version of myself I can be, uh, mostly speaking about the, you know, physical side, who are your supporters? Who are the people that are going to be like, hell yeah, let's go, I'm behind you, love to see it. And we write those out, and we talk about those people a little bit, and talk about how, okay, you're going to lean on them, right? Because it's not going to be easy. You're going to, you know, there are going to be times when you're going to ask for a little bit of support from them, but first you're going to tell them, I'd like your support in doing this, right? So you build that foundation of your support system, and we get all that laid out and talk about some of those conversations, because it is really important, right? That's building up like the foundation of your beautiful, healthy lifestyle city. We can call it that. Next, I told them, okay, when you make this declaration, who are the people that are going to be like, you know what, you're perfect the way you are. You don't need to do that. Those people that go to the gym, they're crazy, they're obsessed, blah, blah, blah. Who are those detractors that, while it may sound like they have good intent, there's probably a little bit malevolence in there of, if you get better, that means it's going to shine a spotlight on where I'm falling short, right? Who are those people? And sometimes people say, you know, I don't have any of that in my life, which maybe you do, maybe you don't. I would say, even if you don't think you do, you're probably not aware of it. It'll come up.
Yeah.
And whether they say they have them or not, I always arm them with what is going to be the moat around that city you've built, to the defense, to keep that bad, the bad messaging out. And I'll tell them, just ready to pull this from your back pocket. When that comes up, when that person comes up and they detract you like that, you're going to say, look, you're going to come back to those goals. I told you these goals, and I told you why they're important to me, and I'm asking for your support in achieving them. But if I can't have your support, I demand your silence. And I'll tell them, look, you need to say that when that comes up, because you are going to be getting outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
You're going to be uncomfortable. And it is going to take very little to push you back into that comfort zone. If you're not ready to shut it down as soon as it pops up, it's going to be an obstacle that's going to be very hard for you to overcome.
That is an excellent point, because I think, you know, societally, you know, that's basically establishing boundaries, and we've gotten to this point
Bingo.
that, you know, setting boundaries is somehow an issue. And, Yeah, I guess you could say there's going to be a conflict somewhere. Someone might be a little offended or what have you, but being able to deliver that healthy boundary and expectation is critical because too often it becomes passive aggressive and creates, the silence, which then spurs on whole other things. And that's in any and all relationships, right?
Yeah.
Whether
And
it's,
it's not only that, but it is a form of aggression, passive aggression, if of someone, oh, you don't need it, please don't, whatever. And you can come back at that and it can become an argument, which is just pulling you off the
yep,
line of achieving your goal, right? Where this is more like judo, redirection, right? So just they come at you and, hey, I want your support, so get with me and go this way or get out of the way.
yeah.
It's that simple, and it shuts them down pretty quickly.
Yeah, and equipping yourself with the good delivery, right? And you kind of mentioned something along this lines, and it's a phrase I use: is good intentions misapplied. Somewhere in there, it is good intentions of them like trying to be encouraging to you, but there is also an element of probably some self-reflection.
Self-preservation.
Yeah. So accounting for that, but just being, hey, thanks for the input. Understand, you know, doesn't align with me. So yeah, it'd be helpful if you just, uh, you know, silence is the best option here.
Keep it to yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, because even within ourselves, just because you have a thought doesn't mean it has to leave your mouth. Um, you know, uh,
Yes. Yeah.
discretion, I guess, or
Yeah. Meditation in real time.
yeah. um, so when it comes to, you know, we'll stick with the burnout. And the other side of burnout is just building the resilience to avoid that burnout. Are there some tactics or strategies you use for yourself or those that you work with your clients um, to frame that up well? Because we have that tendency to think, intensity is the only option when it comes to, working out. How to get that, borrow from Atomic Habits, that 1% better, right? You're pushing yourself, yes, but just a little bit so that, maybe that third set of 12, is it a little bit of a strain? Yeah, but you're still kind of finishing strong, and that's where you
Yeah.
stop, rather than like that, you know, shaking and can't get it up. When do you know where that tension point is within yourself?
Uh, so a couple of things there. First, something you said there in the beginning just made me think of the old Bruce Lee quote about hacking away the unessentials, right?
Mhm.
So there's having a to-do list is really important. I would argue just as important is having that not to-do list, right? So for the most part, for most people, it's not getting caught up in social media, right? It's if it's something you need to do or it's a whatever, allot some time, you're going to do that, right? So time management, activity management, however you want to put it, right? How much time you're going to spend doing what, and be present in the moment in what you're working on there. Um, the second part of you were asking about, I guess, how to manage intensity. A lot of that is going to depend on what the person's exercise history is.
Yeah.
So like I have some different online groups that I run. And I run one for beginners, people who haven't worked out a lot in the past or haven't for years. And it is learning uh, where that intensity is, like what a rate of perceived exertion is. So in the beginning, it's just learning movement patterns. What is a proper squat, proper hinge, push, pull, rotate, all that stuff, how to move through that. And then learning how to build stress on top of that. Because when we talk about strength, strength is the ability of a position or pattern to endure stress. And if we build strength, we're building the stress that it can endure, right? And obviously that fits in the physical sense, but strength is the ability of a position or pattern to endure stress, and that carries over to your political, ideological beliefs that can carry over to emotional stress, right? So a
Yeah.
relationship you have with someone, how much stress can it endure? All these things are things that you can work on to build stress, to build strength, to endure stress in those realms, right? So if somebody has never strength trained before, then we're going to be starting with some basics and learning how much can you handle? When is this giving up versus when is this giving up? And
Yeah.
that's um, very personalized depending on where a person's at.
That's great insight. On really understanding the head and the heart, right? And then it kind of goes back
Yeah,
to kind of where you are in your present state, right? Not your ideal self, but understand, there's the vision of your physical desires, but there's your present state. Um, and from again a running perspective, I think about it for myself. Oftentimes, if I've had do a race, and then I might have an extended recovery after that, and I just don't get back into running. Life happens, and then there's like 2 months pass, and then I start up again. My brain is still where I finished, which was peak performance, but my body is saying, "Son, you are not there anymore."
yeah,
And it that is such a mental and physical, like, wrestling match, more mental, of really, I guess, humility equipping.
yeah. But even within that, so I made the joke when we opened here about not wanting to run 3 miles or more.
Mhm.
Um, but going back to when I got out of the Marines, a lot of the time before that, was either forced. Again, I was an infantry Marine, so plenty of mornings I know we're a health podcast, but let's be honest. In early 20s infantry Marine, a lot of times I was running, I was hungover, right? Um, wasn't enjoyable, but we were competing, right? So who can run the best while in that state? Um, some of the runs were forced, right? And we were just seeing, building the mental resilience there. How much grit, how much metal do you have, right? And when I got out, right, like I couldn't run, right? Or I just, my knees weren't up to it. But once I was coached back to being able to run, running is a sport. A lot of
Mhm.
people forget that. You don't get in
Yeah.
shape. I'm sorry, you don't play sports to get into shape. You get into shape to play sports, right? And that's what that coach there at the Y taught me. And then so I was able to enjoy running again. Then we talked about this offline, but the accident I had back in 2017, November 19th, 2017, squatting 405, uh, keeping up with the kids half my age and the CrossFit boxes I was working out with, being able to run no problem. The next day, hit by an intoxicated driver and pinned between two cars. So November
Wow.
21st, 2017, my workout was taking 10 steps with a walker, right? And plenty of people told me that wouldn't get the strength back. Running days were behind me, blah, blah, blah. Same principles applied, man. I've got to rebuild strength, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to rebuild that strength physically, it comes from up here. So it was literally and figuratively one step at a time. And it took me 16 months to get back to squatting 405 when I was told I wouldn't do it again. And a little before that, I was able to get back to running consistently, right? So probably not going to be setting any land speed records, anything like that, but it's something I've come back from twice now. I don't hope I don't have to come back from it again, but hey, who knows?
But
If it does, I'm ready.
yeah, but I mean, I think you give a great example of, in that phrase you used, you work out to play a sport, not play a sport to work out. And we're playing the sport of life, right? And every
Yes,
little bit
sir.
is that preparation for that thing. And you don't want to be negative Nancy, but you don't know when things are going to happen. And I would argue that your physical conditioning prior to the accident not only prepared you mentally but physically for your body to recover well. and get back to where you were in what I would say a pretty dang short period of time for an extreme accident.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the physical condition definitely made the recovery possible, and even so, there was. I still have the rear bumper from that Jeep. I was walking around the back of my Jeep, and this kid came along driving his daddy's truck, hit me, pinned me. So I still have that rear bumper that's got the leg print in it.
Dang.
When I had 3 severe bone bruises, right? So no breaks. I was really lucky there. Torn MCL, severe crush syndrome to everything in the right leg. So the muscles were all just done. So one of the doctors came in and said, Mr. Mancini, your physical condition is the reason you, one, still have your leg. Two, it isn't broken, but it will help you recover. And then she started to say, but you won't get back to where you were. There was a nurse on the ICU floor who was an athlete in one of the boxes that I coached at. So my physical abilities had gotten known there. She said, and I guess she had some good intention there, saying,
Yeah.
you need to understand you're not going to get back to where you were. So I told her, I said, look, who's in charge of my care? And the look on her face immediately was, she thought I was asking, where's the man in charge? Which was not my intention. But I said, who's in charge of my care? She said, well, I am. Are you okay with that? I said, no, you're not. I am in charge of my care. You are a consultant. Thank you for your input. I will squat 405 again. And she, okay. And that was that. But it was like, no, I'm going to do this again. I've made up my mind. But you're right. My physical abilities up to that point lessened the impact the accident had, and made me physically and mentally better prepared for recovery. Absolutely. Not just that, but just the condition of my body, but the physical experience of understanding how exercise worked, having the resources I could go to, because I was taking, the physical therapists were telling me this was great for my ego. They had nicknamed me Wolverine going through PT, because they were telling me, you're recovering faster than anyone we've ever seen. I was taking 70 to 80 pills a day, supplement wise, 3 shakes loaded with collagen.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing ice baths at a minimum of 3 times a week, for 10 to 15 minutes. So, I mean, I was all in on my recovery. I definitely wasn't spending the money that James Harrison was, but I was putting in as
Principally, you were
much.
there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's a great way to put it. So, yeah. Yeah.
That's a incredible story. Glad you're on the other side of it. And I've heard this, I've used this many times on this podcast and other places, is your test is your testimony, because you don't, when you're coaching, especially, and we're all coaches in some aspect of life, is you're setting the example on how you do things. Not necessarily even the result, but the approach, like you were talking about, that mentality. And it's helpful on the health side, I think, from a healthcare perspective. So many people just abdicate their health to the system. And
Yeah.
I understand the idea, again, good intention misapplied, I think, is that you're trusting the people around you, but it is your health, not theirs. They are providing, their best intentions. But if there's something off, that you don't agree with, you can challenge that in a respectful way. But I think importantly is that what you showed was the personal ownership, is like, I'm going to drive this bus, and you're on for the ride to help support me. And yeah, there's
Yeah.
times I have to defer to them and be like, yeah, maybe I need to slow down or turn left as opposed to going straight. But it's still your health and your body, and not somebody else's.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would, you have to consider the source. And I say that because a lot of doctors are dealing with people. How did you say it? They have given up their given
Advocate
up control of
or
their
advocate.
given up control
Yeah.
of their care to the system, right?
Yep.
That may not always be guiding people the best way. So maybe in her head she is just used to dealing with people who in that situation would be like, yeah, I guess I'm done. I'm not done. No, I'm sorry. I
Yep.
plan on living. I want more life on the X and the Y axis. I plan on getting more days in the life, more life in the days. I'm not done. I
Yep.
know I can come back from this. So thank you for your input. Please step aside.
Yeah. It's
Right.
that's
So
yeah. I've pivoted to that centurion mentality, whether I lived to 100 or not. But I mean, having that mentality that I'm not just going to live long, but live well. Um,
yes.
and having that big vision of like, I want to be able to get down on the ground with my great grandkids. I want to be able to drive the lane on my grandkid. You know what I mean? Now, he
Yeah.
might be 5 when I do it, but point is, I want to be able to, get around and get around well, not just, um, going through the motions. But
Yeah.
so it's that
100%.
it's that mindset. So, I kind of asked the question on the intensity piece. It's what's a practical. I think it starts with awareness, right, within oneself of like being able to accurately assess yourself to be able to apply yourself well. Kind of around that same question of intensity. But what's the first approach for somebody, or when you coach with somebody who's not coming from, recent history of being physically active? Um, that first domino.
Um, the first domino is putting in the effort, right? Trying it, seeing what you can actually do. There's I've long said there's two types of clients. There's the kind I have to push and the kind I have to pull the reins back on, right? And I got to tell you, endurance athletes like yourself, man, they tend to be the kind you got to pull the reins back on for sure. But on the other side, what you're asking about, the people who might be new to it or trying something new, right? There are a lot of endurance athletes who don't uh, incorporate strength training,
Yeah.
right? And they
That's
don't,
the culture for many years, and that's what I grew
yeah,
up.
they don't understand that over the course of 26.2 miles, the person that puts more force into the ground is going to win, right? So if we can get you to create more force,
Mhm.
we can get you to go faster with less effort. Um, so so trying that out, right? And finding out what your capacity is to push in the new realm that you're trying, right? And seeing how your body responds. Um, so if somebody comes back and they're like, I think I'm pretty good at not putting people in this situation by this point in my career. But if they come back and they're like, I couldn't move for 2 days, well, yeah, we overstepped a little bit, right? And
Yep.
we need to come back from there and decrease total volume. So, but if they come back and I was sore, but it wasn't debilitating. I was able to do my job. I was able to live my life. Then, yeah, we've kind of found that sweet spot, and we can grow within that.
Yeah.
And then, part of getting in better shape overall is your body learns to recover faster, and then you can increase workload. You can increase capacity, volume.
Yeah. No, that's a great tip of like what I would add to that is the kind of the grace to be sore for a couple of days, and kind of your trial by fire, so to speak, is like you find where you're at, you push it, you get it done that day, but like you said, you're sore for 2, 3 days.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right, you found the max or a little over the max, and just dial it back, and it's that using the dials to just adjust things and not
yeah. So that's the physical demand that comes with it, right? But especially with my online people, so the people that I'm not really seeing in person, or maybe we're communicating through email or through a spreadsheet or something like that. If it's something new they're getting into, there's not just the physical things that are going to be challenging of like I'm sore the next day, but there's the I'm getting into a new realm. I don't understand this. I can watch the video demo, but the setup is I'm not able to view externally. I got to feel it, right? And so I'll start off with, look, your goal for this first week is to get half these reps done,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's so you've got this all set, but the win at the end of this week, a win is 50% of the work done. And again, if it's somebody new, especially endurance athletes, the first thing they always come back with is, I got it. 100% of the work is going to be done. Okay, man, I hope that happens. If you do, awesome. But again, a win is 50%, right? Because you're trying something new, stuff is going to go wrong. And most of the time they come back and they're like, hey, coach, listen, this came up. I didn't understand this. Da, da, da. So, okay, what'd you get done? And they show me, and it's like 50, 60%. Awesome. That was the win, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, cool. All right. This week, 70% of the work, 70% of the sets, that's the goal. Okay, but this week I think I got it. I'm going to get 100%. Awesome. I hope you do. But the win is this, right? And we work up from there. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, man,
Yeah,
growing within the new realm.
that's a great approach. You're helping me a little bit personally too, where I started a program and it was this hybrid athlete approach. And when I started out, I went to go do all of it, and I'm like, dude, I don't know if I can physically do this and still live the rest of my day out.
Yeah.
I just had to swallow the pride a little bit, and it's like it's amazing how the pride, it's a good sort of good thing that it was wanted to push myself, and I was like realizing, okay, maybe just dial it back, and like you said, that 50% just do half of it, and that's what I did for like the first week, and then I went to 75, and then
Perfect.
hit
Perfect.
third or fourth week, I was like doing kind of the whole thing. And he also had like the thing I was following had tiered levels to it. So like it took me 3 weeks to get to the beginner thing just because again, you got to count for something different, right? I wasn't doing the type of workouts.
Bingo. If it's something new you're doing physically, again, you can watch the video, but even the best athletes, it's you don't have the external eye. And if you don't have a coach that's right there, you don't have external eye feedback, right? Maybe you're videoing, but you don't have it in real time. You can video it and send it to the coach and whatever. So it's you don't know exactly how efficiently you're gonna be able to put it into play, and you don't know how your body's gonna respond, right? So expecting 100% right off the bat is setting you up for failure,
Yeah.
and that should be obvious, right? So yeah, it's you've got to set those expectations and those tick marks of how you set yourself up for a win and grow from there.
So good. Yeah, that's really good. And I think also you're really hitting on the key point that I've become aware of is, and I keep hearing it in other domains, is like having a coach. And, the importance of it in any aspect, not just the physical, right? We're talking fitness, but I think there's so many other options of coaches out there to help facilitate is that external eye, like you said, that third party, so to speak, of seeing it from a different angle because it may feel okay. So say functional wise, you're doing a squat and it feels okay and you're getting it done, but there might be a little off balance that you do that systemically, you're going to get yourself injured
Right.
or you
If
know
you build strength on top of dysfunction, you've strengthened dysfunction, right?
that's
Yeah.
a great quote right there. So I think the value of bringing on coaches and finding it that fits your lifestyle, your financial circumstance, but the value of that investment, especially getting to the fundamentals and really focusing on those for an extended period of time.
Yes, sir.
So kind of run up on time, but before we jump into the hot seat, how can folks find you if they want to check out some of your health programs that are online or in person?
I would say Instagram is probably the easiest. I've got two Instagram handles: Coach Brandon Mancini, all one word, no spaces, and then BMF Coach. BMF stands for Brandon Mancine Fitness, or whatever you want it to stand for. But Coach Brandon Mancine and BMF Coach.
Great. Yeah, I would highly encourage everybody listening to check out Brandon. So hot seat, nothing too heavy. So what are you reading right now?
What am I reading right now? So I'm finishing up Atomic Habits because I was a bit behind on that. And Story Brand. I'm
Okay,
getting ready to start Story Brand.
cool. What are you listening to right now, be it music or podcast?
Andrew Huberman
Okay.
is a go-to podcast.
Yeah.
Ryan's podcast, Order of Man, is a great one. I'd say those are the two podcasts I'm pretty heavy in right now.
Okay. Cool.
Music, it's all over the place, man. I mean, good music is what I listen to.
I'm with you on that. I'm an equal opportunity listener, man. It just depends on the mood and just throw it on.
Yeah, I've got Johnny Cash on my workout playlist. Wu-Tang. It varies quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a spectrum right there. All right, last one. What's your go-to rest and recovery method?
Eat well, sleep well, and I try to get not try to. I get 10 to 15 minutes of time in cold water each week, at least. If I can get up to 20, I will get that into. But cumulative, so I'll do 3 or 4 minutes a day when I can. So I kind of put this concept to my clients, and I call it the depending on who I'm talking to, either the chaos sandwich or the shit sandwich. I have my morning routine where I wake up and prep for my day. A lot of days I get an ice bath in there. I get my workout in. I get some time with the kids before they go off to school, and then I have my evening routine where I get the kids to bed, read them a story, get some time with my wife, and get some reading in, and get prepared to get good sleep. And those are the two pieces of bread. And in the middle is the stuff I have to deal with and get done. The chaos or the shit or whatever you want to put to. So the chaos sandwich, the shit sandwich, however you want to approach that. That's the best way I structure my days.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I kind of like your phrase better than mine, which is bookend your days. But
that's a great way to put it. Again, I might use that again depending on who I'm
yeah, exactly. Depends on the audience, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, great insights, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.